Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder and coach at TEC, and I want to kick this episode off with an all call for coaches, health and fitness professionals, dietitians, nutritionists. If you are in the health and wellness space, and you are frustrated with the growth of your business, if you are struggling to make the money that you want to make, if you're struggling to understand how to attract and retain your ideal client, if you struggle to charge what you feel like you're worth, then I am speaking to you. TEC, the company that I founded, is a business accelerator for people like yourself. Individuals in the health and wellness space that want to grow profitable businesses but are struggling to do so. We have spent the last decade putting together all of the resources that you need to address the specific pain points that individuals in this space face when they are working to grow and scale their businesses. We address that in three primary ways. We look at revenue. How do you make money? This is a primary pain point that individuals in this space, in the coaching industry, face, and we address that very tactically and help you put systems in place and develop skills to make the revenue that you want. We also address client acquisition and retention. How do you attract the right client, specifically a client that is willing to pay you what you're worth, recognizes your value and what you bring to their lives, and how do you retain that client? How do you stop the incessant, consistent, constant running around and chasing new clients? This is one of the biggest pain points in our industry, is that we're always trying to fill our rosters. If we can keep the clients we have, we solve that problem. So we teach you how to do that so that you can stop that rat race. We also address support. So the coaching industry is very siloed. We're all trying to keep secrets from each other. For some reason, there is no secret sauce. What is required is support. We want collaboration. We want to work with entrepreneurs and business owners that are excited and fired up to trade ideas, to share information so that we can elevate the industry as a whole. So TEC focuses primarily on providing that network so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to solve these problems for yourself. We put you in relationship with driven, fired up entrepreneurs in this space that you can share ideas with, that you can get mentorship from, and so you can accelerate the growth of your business versus trying to figure it out all on your own. So if any of these three primary pain points sound like things that you have dealt with or are currently dealing with, then I want you to reach out. You can do that at thomasendurancecoaching.com. Click Become a Coach in the top header to get started. You can also reach out to us at enduranceminded.com. We'll put the information in the show notes of this episode. We are looking to work with 100 coaches this year in 2024 to help them grow and accelerate their coaching businesses. We only work with the best of the best. We only work with people that are ready to make a change, that are ready to change the narrative in the coaching industry. And so if this sounds like you, if you feel like you're the right fit, then we want to work with you. We want you to be one of those 100 in 2024. Again, that's thomasendurancecoaching.com. Click the link at the top of the header or check for the link in the show notes. And I look forward to helping you build and scale a wildly profitable coaching business. Today we're going to talk about time management. We're specifically going to talk about why it's such a big deal. Why is it the thing that so often interrupts what we're trying to do, gets in our way? It's the number one thing that I hear from anyone that I talk to, any athlete I've worked with, business owner, entrepreneur, the list goes on. We don't have enough time, right? I don't have time to get the things done that I want. I would have done that, but I ran out of time. How do I make the time? The list goes on. You can insert whatever specific scenario applies to your life. I have no doubt that if you're listening to this, you've been there. You've run out of time. You want more time to do other things. And so I want to talk about time management. As always, I want to try to provide some actionable guidance, some things that you can take away and deploy in your own life quickly in an effort to see some change. And I'm going to do this by pulling some themes from other episodes. This is something that I've talked about a fair amount because it is something that's pervasive. If we talk about or look at it through the in the athletic space, through the lens of athleticism and what we're trying to do as athletes, time is the number one thing that is not on our side. Right? It makes it more challenging to commit the time necessary to reach our goals. It's the thing that gets in our way. It's the thing that keeps us from putting in the training hours that we want, from reaching the level of fitness that we want, that causes us to feel burnout, to feel overtrained, to feel overwhelmed, anxious. On the business front, same thing, right? I don't have the time. I'm too busy. Work-life balance. Everybody wants to feel like they have time for the things they want to do. That's really what we're talking about when we're talking about work-life balance, is that we're talking about some inherent and present lack of something that we would like to be doing more of that we are currently not doing. And so often that is spending more time pursuing things that we are passionate about, that fill our cups, that feel like give back to us versus things that drain us. Now, that could be work, that could be particular responsibilities, that could be any number of things in your life. But that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about balance. And so I want to spend some time today pulling from past themes, things that I've talked about, and just shedding some new light on them. Like everyone, hopefully, as you get more water under your bridge, as you have more conversations, as you learn and grow, I too have learned and have adapted and changed my thoughts and feelings and approaches to some of these ideas and things that I'm going to share with you today. But I love, just as a way to set the stage, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, but I love the adage of, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what you value. And I think that's almost just a great mantra to keep in mind as we move through our days and through our lives, because that there really is no more cut and dry representation of what we value than where we're spending our time. Now, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't like to be spending our time doing other things, but the real fact remains is that the things that we give time to are the things that we must value, right? The way that we spend our days are the physical representation, the manifestation of the things that we have said are a priority, right? Now, we've said that with our actions. Again, mentally, emotionally, we might feel otherwise, but what we are giving time to is what we are valuing. It's certainly what we're telling the world that we value. And so I just like to keep that in mind. No matter, and I would even say, if you feel like you have a reaction to that, if there's a response to that where you're like, that's not true, or, I have lots of balls in the air, there's lots of things I like to do, that's not, if you feel a bit of anxiety with that, or you feel the need to push back, or you had a bit of a response that feels like a friction point, maybe just lean into that. Again, I'm not saying that is that life is that cut and dry and that there's not nuance and there's not dynamic components at play. But I do think that it's an important recognition that at the end of the day, where we spend our time is what we have prioritized. Otherwise, we'd be doing something else, right? Again, maybe there's an opportunity for a shift. We'd like to be doing other things. We'd like to prioritize other things. But the fact remains is that how we move through our days and the things we give our time to, or what we have said is valuable, because we've put our time and energy into pursuing those things and taking action in that direction. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Again, is a bit of a mantra. I think it's just a helpful reminder, even if it makes us feel shitty. And if it helps us recognize that maybe where we're spending our time is not in alignment with what we value. That's a perfectly acceptable, albeit painful, recognition of where there's opportunities for shift and for change. The other thing that I want to highlight before I move into some of these tactical pieces is communication. You're going to notice a theme that communication is a really, really important part of these tools that can help you recognize what you value and build a life and build your time around making space and time and pursuing these things that you value. And maybe at first glance, it might seem like communication wouldn't be a part of this equation because this is something that is it's specific to you, right? It's your time management. It's your calendar. So you might ask, who do I need to communicate to? Why does it matter if it's only something that impacts me? And what I want to highlight is that pursuing these things alone is not the approach, right? It is not heroic to do anything alone, and that's really become very in vogue, and it's become very fashionable to kind of take on this quiet warrior mentality, right? Put your head down, grind it out, figure it out on your own. Don't worry about anybody else. You're in control of everything that you need to be in control of. Whatever Instagram post and magazine and motivational quote that we've all last heard. And I just don't think that's true. And I know for a fact, in terms of how I see this play out in the lives of others and myself and those that I'm close to, it is not heroic to do it alone. And I would go so far as to say it's a waste because you're missing out on some key opportunities. You're missing out on a really important part of the equation. Now, it's not to say that we don't have a massive responsibility and a massive role to play in how we show up and how we manage our time and some of the actions that we take, some of which I'll go through in just a moment. But I want to highlight, just before we dive in, the theme of communication. And I want you to listen for what that sounds like, how I describe that. I want you to think about how that shows up in your own life. Where are the opportunities for improved and increased communication between you and those around you, the people that are important to you, the people that are in your circle, so that you can actually increase how you show up. You can increase your impact on a daily basis. You can increase the impact that you make or want to make in key critical areas of your life. So, first thing to keep in mind, just as an overarching mantra, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what you value. Again, I think that's just an important, nice little thing to keep in mind because there just is no truer reflection of where we're at and where there's opportunity for growth. And the next, I want you to just keep communication in mind. Listen for that theme and think about how that shows up in your own life, how you can work to improve that. What are some skills you need to develop? Who do you need to communicate with? And so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. So let's start with proactive versus reactive. Again, I'm pulling from themes from previous episodes. This is certainly a common thread with Endurance Minded because it is a common thread in most people's lives. We either want to be doing different things with our time, we're not good at managing our time, we fill our days with things that don't matter, we spend more time and energy on things that are not in alignment with our values. I could go on and on and on. So proactive versus reactive, what does that mean? What it means at a very kind of foundational level is that how do we be proactive with our time versus reactive? I'll give you an example of reactive because this is where most people live and respond from. Reactive is putting out fires. Reactive is I wake up in the morning and I let it come to me. How's my day going to unfold? Right? What's the next email I get? What's the next phone call, the text message? I'm putting out fires. I'm responding to the things that are right in front of me. And that creates a space and an environment where I have very little control over how my days unfold. Now I understand that that's the way life goes. That happens every day. So I'm not saying that we can be completely absolved of that. Things come up. We have to put out fires, especially as you become busier, as you're in service of more people, dynamic teams, families, relationships you're responsible for, whatever that is. There are certainly things that come up. But I don't want you, and I'm an advocate for not waiting for that to happen. So we can still be proactive in a direction that feels productive. And when those things come up, we still know that we are grounded in areas that are important to us. A few ways we can do this. First is to recognize is that not everything is a priority, right? So many of us live our lives based on a task list, a to-do list. That to-do list is very long and it includes everything from going to the grocery store to sending in a proposal at work to picking up kids from school to writing a book to write whatever. The list goes on. Not all those things are as important as others. So the first thing that we can do to be proactive versus reactive is to really outline our priorities. I would encourage you to do this on a weekly basis. Priorities are no more than 3 to 5 things on a weekly basis, and those things are in alignment with your values, right? So what that might mean is if you are an athlete and you are training for an event, or you're working to reach an improved level of fitness, you're working to improve your body composition, to feel better, to sleep better, that's a priority. Taking action in the direction of that very specific goal that is longer away, that is more long-term, is a priority. So what are the steps you're going to take in the direction of that thing? What isn't a priority is putting gas in your car, right? Now, it's important. But when we talk about in alignment with our values, I want you to see the difference between task and priority. So I want you to outline 3 to 5 priorities on a weekly basis that move you in the direction of your values. Specifically, outlining those 3 to 5 year goals. If that feels too far away, 6 months to a year goals. But priorities are things that are actually moving the needle in your life. It's things that are connected to what you care most about. Tasks are everything else, right? Send an email to X, Y, and Z. Follow up with this. Do this task. Go get groceries. Those are important. All those things might need to get done. They are tasks. So what you do is that you differentiate between the things that are actually moving the needle in your life and the things that are you putting out fires and just checking boxes. The reason that we are so often infatuated with really long to-do lists is that it's a small dopamine hit every time we check that box. So that when we combine priorities and tasks, we get to feel good about ourselves for checking things off the list, even if they're not moving us in the direction that we want. Priorities should be harder to accomplish, right? It should be deeper work, more thoughtful work, more meaningful work. Things that push us might require us to develop some skills, to develop some relationships, bring in other people, ask for feedback. Priorities are more dynamic, developed, nuanced, bigger picture work that's actually, again, moving the needle in our lives. Tasks don't do that. Task is a quick hit. You do it today and it's done. All right. That's why we love to fire off 20 emails in a row. That feels like a huge win. That's not a priority, right? Because again, that takes more time. So that's why it feels good, but that's why I also want to encourage you to differentiate between priorities and tasks so that you're not reactive, right? You're not falling victim to those quick hits of dopamine when we get those tasks done and you forget to focus on your priorities. Next thing is time blocking. I've heard a lot about this. I don't need to define it. You know what it is. The real fact of the matter is that however you want to get at this, you need to schedule it. If it's something that you care about, Put it into your life. When does it happen? Right? It won't happen on accident, and it won't happen without focused and intentional effort. So if you are not doing something that you would like to do, when does it happen? Schedule it. The best place that this shows up is workouts. I'm a massive proponent of scheduling your workouts. What I mean by that is scheduling it in combination with the rest of your life calendar. If you use a calendar for work, you're scheduling your meetings and your tasks and all your other things, workouts should go in there. They are just as important. You wouldn't miss a meeting. Don't miss a meeting with yourself, right? Time blocking. You have to be proactive about when this happens. It will not happen if it's not in concert with the rest of your life. This is why these things get lost and forgotten, and we always feel like we're behind, is because they're secondary and tertiary to the other things that we're doing, right? We've scheduled everything else. We know we have to pick up the kids from school. We have to make dinner. We have to get this done. This report has to be due. We have time parameters on everything else in our life. Why wouldn't we put them on the things we care most about? Again, I'll use exercise as an example because this is the number one thing. People say they don't have time for exercise. You do. It's not included in your life. Of course, you're not going to have time if you filled your day with a massive schedule of to-do lists and things you have to get done, and then we expect that that's going to happen on one side or the other of an exhausting day. No, of course not. It makes sense. I understand that that would be challenging. It would be very, very hard to come back from that and look for opportunities to prioritize that. Schedule it. Put it in. If it means something to you, if it's something you want to do, you need to make time for it, and it needs to be integrated into your life. Next, communicate, right? So first part of this theme of communication that I mentioned at the top of this episode. You need to communicate with those around you. What's important, right? People around me know, I'm using myself as an example, the people around me know that exercise is just as important as everything else in my life. I don't hide that, right? Somebody wants to schedule a meeting with me? No, that's my time to work out. I'm not available then. And I promise you, if I skip that, you won't get the best version of me. Communicate with those around you. Who needs to know that? Who needs to know why it's important? Who needs to know why that's important to you and why it's a goal, right? Is it a partner? Is it family? No, I need to get up in the morning. I need to manage my time so that I can do X, Y, and Z. If you're building a business, you're just starting out. I work with a ton of coaches that are building businesses. They're doing that in concert with other jobs. They have to pay their bills, like all of us. They're working a job and they're building a coaching business. When does that happen? We have to schedule it. Do you have to wake up in the morning? Do you need to work on that business before you go to work? Do you need to spend some time in the afternoon planning? Do you need to take a lunch break, and instead of going out to eat, do you need to make food and sit at your desk and work on that other business? When does it happen? You have to make time for it so that the needle moves. I did that when I started my first business. I was working a job, set my alarm, get up in the morning, right? 4 o'clock, 4 to 7, work on the other business, right? Work out 7 to 8, get ready for work at 9, come home, check in again. I had to communicate that with the people around me. Why was that important? What was I building towards? We had to make some sacrifices. That's why communication is important, is because it takes other people to support your goals. So if you're going to be proactive versus reactive, I bet there's some other people involved. People in your home, friends, colleagues, right? You got to bring people into the fold. You have to explain to them and communicate to them why it's important, because they're probably involved too, and it might impact them in some way. Hey, I need you to do this so that I can do this, right? I need you to pick up some slack here so that I can focus on this thing, right? Myself, my business, my whatever that is that you're not getting to, the thing that you don't have time for right now. Where does it come from? There's probably somebody you need to pull into that conversation. So that's the first place communication shows up. Next is to identify your non-negotiables. So what are these? Your non-negotiables is really just what it sounds like. So things you're unwilling to waver on. And the way that I like to think about non-negotiables are what are the things that you are unwilling to negotiate, that you're unwilling to remove from your life on a daily basis, right? So I'll give you a few great examples. Exercise, non-negotiable, right? And I would even classify that, for me, that's movement daily, a walk, stretch, mobility, workout, right? Checking in with my body, making space and time for movement. There's also the practice of creating that dedicated space for me mentally and emotionally, like carving out that time, setting aside that time and telling myself that it is of equal importance to everything else that I have going on. There is a massive mental and emotional benefit to that as well. Um, work's probably in the mix for most people, right? What type of work? Okay, it might be a non-negotiable. That's great. Do good work hard. Um, what's the other one? Family, friends, good nutrition, sleep, reading. What are your non-negotiables? Write them down. Shouldn't be a long list. 3 to 5 things. And I want you to define those. What are the things that you're unwilling to sacrifice on a daily basis? That's what we're going to build around. That's what you're fighting for. That's what you're trying to be proactive toward. Next is I want you to do a time audit. So now that you have those non-negotiables written down, and again, I'm serious, I want to encourage you to write them down. Think through what are the things you care about? And you need to get really clear on that because there's a lot coming at us. There's a ton of inputs. If you take stock of your day, most of those things are not non-negotiables. Most of those things are busy work. Most of those things are putting out fires. That's okay. That's the way life goes. That's why you got to get clear on what matters. What are you willing to fight for? Once you're clear on that, once you've written them down, take a time audit. Where are you spending your time? More importantly, are your non-negotiables reflected in that time audit? Look at your calendar, your schedule, your phone calls, your alarms. When do you wake up? When you go to bed? When, based on how you move through your day, are your non-negotiables reflected in that time audit? This is a very eye-opening practice because I promise you there are some gaps. I've done this a lot of times with myself. Every time I do it, there's room for improvement, right? Give you an example. If we want to get up in the morning and we need to work out or we need to work on a business, we need to create some space and time to move the needle in a very key area of our lives, don't go to bed at midnight. Stop watching Netflix until midnight and feeling like shit when you wake up in the morning or skipping your alarm, right? We have to make decisions and take action in the direction of the things that we want. So when you do that time audit and you look at your alarm and you're like, yeah, I'm going to bed at midnight and I set my alarm for 5 and I'm really waking up at 6:30 and I'm giving it a halfway effort. Well, there you go, right? You have to set yourself up for success. Again, communication. Is there a reason that you're going to bed that late? Right? Do you need to pull someone else in? Is there some support you need to help you go to bed so that you can wake up early, so that you can exercise or work on your business or do the thing that you want to do, go for a walk, spend time with your dog, whatever those things are? Again, that's probably a non-negotiable. Specific to that example, that thing that happens in the morning is probably something that you're willing to fight for. So take a time audit, be honest with yourself. Are your non-negotiables reflected in that time audit? And then communicate. Are there people that you need to bring in? Right? Say if it's a work schedule. You're working until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You're working through your lunch break. You're working You're taking on tasks that are taking up a lot of your time. They're eating into these other areas of your life that you would like to see reflected. Is there some support you can get? Can you coordinate with a coworker? Can you ask a family member? Can you, right? Communication, again, is probably part of the equation. Can you do it on your own? Maybe. It's not heroic to do that, though. It's foolish. It requires people. So if you're like, no, I can just put my head down and do it. I can make the time. I can get up at 3 a.m. All right, maybe, yes. But can you communicate? Right? I bet communication solves a lot of this. Family, friends, coworkers, the people in your orbit need to know why it's important, and then ask them for support. Get clear on what you need and then ask for it. Hey, I'd really love to work out in the morning. Can we flop breakfast and dinner? Right? I'm usually making breakfast. Can I make dinner and you make breakfast at home? That way I can work out or I can work for an extra 45 minutes on building this thing. And that'd be super important to me. That'd be really helpful, right? There's so many ways that we can slice that where it actually makes a massive difference. The other thing to recognize is it's not typically massive chunks of time. 30 minutes a day. That's several hours a week that we can do other things. So we often think about when we're doing these time audits, we're like, oh, I need 2 more hours. Maybe, but probably not. 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes a day, 2.5 hours a week. It's a massive amount of time. That's a ton of time to work. That adds up over a month and a year. We can do the math on that. So easy to really move in a positive direction, to spend more time in those non-negotiables, to let your calendar reflect your values. And it's not a massive shift in your time commitment. 15 to 30 minutes can make all the difference in the world. So identify your non-negotiables, look at where you're spending your time, be honest with yourself, and then communicate what you need to integrate those non-negotiables or to spend time in the direction of those non-negotiables in your day. Third thing, expectation mapping. I love this so much. This is something I've talked about a fair amount in different areas, some on this podcast. I talk a lot about it to clients that I work with, athletes, entrepreneurs, because expectation misalignment is one of the things that derails us more often in our lives than anything else. What I mean by that is we imagine how something's going to play out. We imagine how a scenario is going to unfold. And then when we actually get there, when it's not in alignment with our expectations, it derails us. So if we can map out our expectations around particular scenarios and seasons of life, when we get there, we're not derailed. We've already imagined that scenario. We've mapped out the expectations. In theory, the goal would be that our expectations are in alignment with reality. And so it's fine. We cruise on. So first thing is, we don't want you to be surprised. The reason that we do this is, again, it's disruptive to be surprised. It's disruptive to not know what's going to happen, or to watch how this thing unfolds in front of us in real time. This is very much a proactive versus reactive situation, where when we move into a dynamic season of life, we're busy, a busy day, a busy time period, we're traveling, that's a reactive scenario. We just let it happen to us. So the other reason that this is important is I think it's really, really valuable to not fight these seasons of our life. I'm going to give you an example of this just to kind of highlight how this typically plays out. One of the most classic examples of this is a busy athlete, right? So it's an individual who has very high expectations on their career and their family, and they're also working very hard to maintain a consistent athletic identity, to maintain consistent movement and exercise, either for just a healthy life or in the direction of a particular goal. That could be anything. So this busy athlete is staring on the barrel of a massive week at work, for instance, right? Big project coming up. They have some travel thrown in there. They got a bunch of meetings. They're going to be working late. Somebody's flying in from out of town, right? Whatever that is. Busy week. Burning the candle at both ends. And that athlete likes to imagine a scenario where their training is unchanged, right? So when they say, yeah, next week is going to be nuts. This and this is happening. We got all this unfolding, work's crazy, huge project deadlines. But it's good. I'll make the training work. I'll get up early. I'll stay up late, work out at lunch. Good intentions. I want you to ask yourself if that's realistic. Is it realistic to imagine that things will be unchanged? Are those appropriate expectations for how that week is going to unfold? And I think that really is the root of what I'm asking here is what's realistic, right? Because what's realistic is what is achievable. That's what's repeatable. And so for that busy athlete example, expectation mapping would look like this. Okay, let's forecast out. Here we are. We have next week, busy week. Things are crazy. All these moving parts. Let's just walk through in our minds how that's going to unfold. What's a particular day going to look like? Okay, well, in this busy week, I'm up at 5. I got to get to the office by 6. I got lunch meeting with clients. We're going to be doing presentations till late in the afternoon. I'm home at 8 or 9 o'clock. I'm going to try to eat some dinner, go to bed, rinse and repeat, right? Got family at home, trying to make that work. Okay, what are some realistic expectations for how that week is going to unfold? Instead of just running headlong into that week and not making any changes, not realigning expectations, not communicating, what can we do? Right? And I hope you can see, like literally when I describe this, I feel anxious for this hypothetical person. I'm like, it's going to be brutal. They're going to be playing catch up from start to finish because what's happened is if they have a partner at home, if they have a family, if they're not living alone, well, they need to communicate with that person. What's that going to look like? What's realistic for a time commitment to those individuals, right? Maybe we're not sharing dinner. Hey, I need you to help, pick up the slack this week. I'm daylight till dark, burning the candle at both ends. Probably not going to be here for dinner. Hey, might need you to take the kids to school. Right. Whatever that is for you, whatever your particular life scenario is, communicate. Okay. Same thing. At work, right? Are there other responsibilities that you're not going to be able to service in the same way that you usually do? Can you communicate that? Are there coworkers? Hey, I'm usually pretty client facing, but this week I'm going to be pretty out of pocket. Can you check in on these few people, make sure they're good? Can you take this call for me? Can you do whatever? On the exercise front, no, you're not going to get a 12-hour training weekend. Can you do it? Maybe. Is it going to kill you? Are you going to be miserable? Are you going to feel resentful? Probably, right? There's a point of diminishing returns. So what is a realistic expectation for that week? Can you get out for a 30-minute walk, 15-minute walk during lunch? Can you ride your bike to work? Can you stretch before you go to bed? Can you, look for small wins. The training doesn't have to look the same. This is how we map our expectations. Just think ahead, right? What's realistic? And then how do I include my non-negotiables? This is a big piece of the puzzle. Okay, we have our non-negotiables outlined. Examples of that would be exercise, time with family, doing meaningful work, right? Whatever those are for you, what does it look like to include and integrate and spend time with those non-negotiables in alignment with realistic expectations and align your expectations for that week? Time with family is going to look different. Let's get ahead of that. What's a realistic expectation? Let's map that out. Time for ourselves and training. It's going to look different. Let's get ahead of it. Let's map it out. This is where, again, we can do this on a daily basis, but typically with dynamic periods of life, it could be a busy day, right? How many times have you thought that a day was going to go one way and it totally imploded and went another way? Could you have gotten ahead of that? Did you know it was going to be a busy day? Travel days are a great example. If you're someone that travels for work or even travels for recreation or leisure, what does that day look like? Right? I can't tell you how many athletes I've talked to like, oh, I'll just get up at 3 a.m. and get my long run in, and they go get on a plane for 8 hours and then touch down and then work. No, don't do that. It's diminished returns. I appreciate that you're willing to do that. Let's align expectations. What's the best way to set you up for success? So I want you to think about expectation mapping. The next time you have a dynamic time period, busy, hectic, more responsibilities, less time, whatever that scenario is for you, map that out. Get ahead of it. Be proactive versus reactive. How do your non-negotiables show up in that time period? Work to adjust them to make them realistic. They're probably not going to show up in the same ways, in the same frequency, in the same capacity. So what can you do to adjust? Quick note on frequency. This is another big adjustment with expectation mapping. If you typically work out every day and you're mapping out your expectations for a really busy or dynamic time period in your life, it's okay to adjust the frequency. What does a win look like? What does it look like to show up for my non-negotiables this week? Maybe it's 4 days a week. Maybe it's getting out for 3 walks. Can I combine them? Can I get out for a walk with my partner or to spend time with family or friends and combine those things? Maybe it's not the same thing that I'm used to doing. Maybe it's not 2 hours in the gym. It's not my training plan. That's okay. Consistency is all that matters, right? It's okay to navigate dynamic time periods differently. The only thing that is disruptive is when we think that we can do exactly the same thing and we fail to adapt in the face of dynamic periods. In the face of new information and new data and changes to our life, we fail to adapt. That's the disruptive part, right? That's the damaging part, not a reduction in frequency or intensity. So expectation mapping, again, communication. There's people that need to be involved in this. When you are realistic about how your time is going to play out and where you want to spend it, I promise you there's some people you need to talk to. Some people that need to be in the fold to help you accomplish that. Otherwise, you're going to be putting out fires, right? They're going to be coming to you. You're going to be reactive and you're going to be frustrated, resentful. You're going to feel like you're behind. It doesn't have to be that way. Last but not least, we're going to think about what we're willing to invest. So, when we're talking about time management, when we're talking about where we spend our time, how we prioritize that time, our non-negotiables, the things we're willing to fight for, when we're talking about aligning expectations with reality, we are going to be faced with a value proposition. We're going to be faced with the necessary requirement to make a decision around how much we're willing to invest to make that happen. So there's only a couple of things you can invest. You can invest time, you can invest money, you can invest both. Everything has a cost. So I want to be very clear. What I'm talking about is not a passive approach. It's not a passive solution. It has a cost. It has a cost in the sense that something is going to have to be kicked out. Something is going to have to take less of your time so that things you care about can take more of your time. And I think that that's a really important recognition to make, is that everything has a cost. And I think this is where a lot of people get frustrated when it comes to time management, when it comes to how we say we would like to spend our time is that we haven't actually given the weight to the cost required to achieve that, to live that life, to have our days unfold in that way. And I'm not making a judgment statement on anybody's life and how you spend it. But I do think that recognizing that everything has a cost, and you have to be honest. What are you willing to pay? What are you willing to invest to make it happen? And I'll go back to my example about time audit. Right? I talked about, are you going to bed late, not waking up early, because that's the time when you need to get the thing done that you want to get done. An example of that cost would be, are you spending that time watching shows at night and not going to bed so that you're not getting up early, so that you're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish? And the cost is that might need to go away. Now you have to ask yourself, are you willing to invest that? That time might be important to you, and that's fine. I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong. But you have to be honest. Are you willing to invest in the cost of what that thing requires? If the answer is no, that's fine. Can the time come from somewhere else? Yes or no? Or do you need to adjust your goals? Same thing. There's a million areas of life that this applies to. Healthy diet is one of them, right? Food that makes us feel good. It supports who we want to be. People say, yeah, I want to do it. I'm ready. Whatever it takes. Okay? There's a cost, right? I have to prepare for that. I can't go eat fast food every day. I have to make food at home. I have to create time for that. I have to build a grocery list. I have to meal prep. I have to think ahead. I have to be cognizant of the food that I'm eating. So there's a skill that I might have to develop, right? I might have to understand food better. I might need to understand nutrient density and macronutrients. And are you willing to invest what it costs, which is time, money, develop skills, which is time, to make that happen? Same thing on the athlete front. I can't tell you how many athletes I've talked to that said, I'll do whatever it takes. Okay, great. And then we get to it, and they're not able to do whatever it takes. Now, again, this is not a judgment on their commitment to what they've said they wanted to do. It's a realistic acknowledgement of what they're able to invest. They might not be able to do it. Right? I can't invest that. I can't give up my mornings because that's important time with my family. I have to be there for work. I have to, whatever that is, that's fine. But I want you to really ask yourself what you're willing to invest, and I want you to be honest. What are you willing to pay? And it's okay when you arrive at the truth. Whatever that answer is, that's fine. You can make a decision about what you do with that information. Does that honest answer not make you happy? Maybe there's time for a change. Okay, do you want to shift that? Fine. You can make some changes in another direction. Or you say, no, this is it. These are unmovable. Okay, now we need to adjust goals, right? We can't be frustrated at the results we get for the changes we didn't make, right? We have to be accountable to our input such that it produces the output that's kind of inherent based on what we've done, right? So if I want to be a world-class ultramarathon runner, but I'm only willing to give 8 hours a week of training, I can't be mad that I don't get there. It's not going to get me there. I could be fit. I could get a lot done. I'm not going to be great. I'm not going to be exceptional. So what's the price, right? If I say I'm only willing to give 8 hours, I need to adjust my expectations. I need to do some expectation mapping. I need to understand what I'm willing to invest. And again, I don't say this to highlight a deficiency or to make anyone feel bad about what they're prioritizing and where they're spending their time. But I think the recognition of being very, very honest, brutally honest with ourselves and what we're able to invest and what that's actually going to yield in terms of results is a really important practice, right? I'll give you my very real world, real time, right now example. I know exactly what is required for me to be as fit as I've ever been in my life. I know what the training can look like. I know what the diet plan can look like. I know what the intensity and the reps and the sets I know how all that would break down. I'm not willing to invest that right now. What I care more about is doing great work, spending time with friends and family, making sure that other non-negotiables are serviced in my life. And so I recognize what I'm willing to invest and I set my goals in alignment with that. Right? I'm not going to be as fit as I've ever been. I want to be in good shape. I want to feel great. I want to move well. I want to be strong. I want to be able to have experiences. I want to be able to do lots of different sports. But that, there's a limit to that. I know that I'm not willing to invest what's required. So I can't sit back and say, this year is the year for me to be as fit as I've ever been. That's a lie. I'm not going to be able to do it. That would be an expectation misalignment. And that would just set me up for failure. Right? I would be frustrated because I'm saying one thing and I'm doing another. So I want you to get really clear on what you're willing to invest. I want you to be honest with how much you're willing to pay for the goals that you've said that you want, for the things that you say you're not spending your time doing now. How much are you willing to invest? Time or money, or both. And then align your goals with your values. Align your goals with where you're investing your time, with what's realistic. So quick recap, talking about time management, where we spend our time. Again, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what you value. Be proactive versus reactive. Take charge, right? Unless you take charge, it's going to happen to you, not for you. And that's a frustrating place to live from. Very truthfully, it can just be better. It doesn't have to be a firestorm every day. It doesn't have to be hectic and chaotic and frenetic. The energy that surrounds that is a really challenging place to live in. What are your non-negotiables? Get clear. There's a handful, right? 3 to 5. It's not a bunch of stuff. Make sure that you're clear on your non-negotiables and then take a time audit. Be brutally honest. Where are you spending your time? And is that time in service of those non-negotiables? Next is expectation mapping. You got to think ahead again, in alignment with proactive versus reactive, but this is a very specific exercise. Think ahead. Don't be frustrated that things are happening to you when you didn't change your expectations in alignment with different circumstances, right? That doesn't make sense, right? We have to adapt. We have to be agile. We have to be fluid, and we have to align our expectations towards reality, towards what's realistic. That's better than setting unrealistic expectations and being frustrated that we didn't execute on them or that we let ourselves down or let others down. Next is, what are you willing to invest? Just be honest, right? Again, this is not a judgment call. I'm not saying that anyone is better than anyone else. If your answer is one thing or another, but I want you to be honest. I want you to be really clear about what you're willing to invest and then align your goals with that. Again, my example, I could say I want to be the best runner in the world. That's not, I'm not giving the time. So what's realistic, right? Are your goals in alignment with what you're willing to invest? And then the overarching piece of the puzzle is communication. Don't do it alone. It is not heroic to do it alone. It's not cool. It's not valiant. You're not a warrior. You're wasting time and energy. when you're doing it alone, when you're not communicating with those around you, when you're not conveying what you need, why it's important, what's realistic, how are things changing. You got to pull people in. There are people that are in your orbit that need to support you. And one of the reasons that you're having such a hard time with this is that you're not communicating. I know that's not going to land with everyone, but some of you listening know who you are. You're trying to do it alone. You haven't communicated, and it is hurting you. It's getting in the way of what you want because you're trying to do it all. You're running around like crazy, and no one knows what the hell you're trying to do. No one knows why it's important. And you're just spending your time putting out fire, bouncing from thing to thing, always feeling like you're 3 steps behind. Communication goes a long way. You have to advocate for yourself. And that will start to change things because people in your orbit will start to support the direction that you want to go. They'll start to recognize what your non-negotiables are. So, as always, hope this was helpful. If you have comments, thoughts, this resonated, this tripped you up, this was triggering, let us know. Love to hear from you. EnduranceMinded.com. Scroll to the bottom, drop us a note. Always love hearing from our audience. And ThomasEnduranceCoaching.com. If you want to speak with a coach, if this is challenging, if you're really struggling to do this through the lens of athleticism, through exercise, through training, if you're one of the people that puts yourself at the bottom of your to-do list, workouts and training always get pushed aside when things get busy, that's where coaches shine, right? You need that person in your corner. ThomasEnduranceCoaching.com. You can click on the button in the top right corner. We'll connect you with a coach. You can talk to them for free and just understand what a coaching relationship looks like and how that can help you. The other side of Thomas Endurance Coaching is if you're a coach and you're trying to build or you have a coaching business and you're not getting where you want to go, you're struggling to make money, you're struggling to prioritize, you're struggling with time management, you don't know how to integrate being an entrepreneur and a business owner into your life, TEC has a business accelerator for coaches that's designed specifically to solve those problems. How do you grow and scale? How do you get support? How do you advocate for yourself? What are those skills? What do you invest in? The list goes on. So if you are someone who wants to grow and scale, who's struggling with these things, you can also reach out to us at ThomasEnduranceCoaching.com. Button also in the top right, become a coach. You can click there and we'll guide you through a process to connect with you and learn more about your needs, who you are as a business owner, and how our program might be right for you. So thanks as always. I appreciate all of our listeners, and we'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.